The transfer portal may have been making you a little bit emotional depending on how it's impacted your roster. We got a couple of moves here happening. Guys are starting to narrow down their final schools. Now, we don't have as many commitments just yet, but I would expect over the course of this next week to 10 days, we're going to start to see the grand finale when it comes to this transfer portal cycle. As of 11:14 a.m. Eastern, this is all accurate. So if something ages here in the future, that's how the portal works. All right, make sure you're subscribed. As we get rolling here, running back Dylan Edwards from Colorado. This was something that we heard rumblings of, that he was going to enter the transfer portal. Actually ended up being a reality as of, I believe, yesterday, if not early this morning. 36 receptions last year for Colorado. Massive part of that offensive attack with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Like, you think back to that TCU game, Dylan Edwards made some big-time plays that ultimately allowed them to win that football game. The buzz from Pete Nakos, who, again, I would encourage you to follow on social media to make sure you're dialed in for all things portal, is that there was a mixture of feeling like he would like to be somewhere that runs the football a little bit more. I mean, Colorado was one of the lowest percentage of called run plays in the country last season, 40% run. They averaged 2.3 yards a carry as a team. So part of that is you didn't have an offensive line to run behind. Dylan Edwards says, hey, I played running back. I want to go somewhere where I can run the ball. Now, Pete Nakos also said that there is some intrigue around Dylan Edwards, maybe kind of fitting into that slot wide receiver mold. We'll see. He's a versatile player. Will have a lot of options, I have to believe. Now, he's from the state of Kansas. And Avery Johnson won Twitter yesterday by throwing up a picture of him and Dylan Edwards from their Pop Warner days playing ball together. Dylan Edwards, it's also worth noting, was committed at one point in time to Kansas State before he ultimately ended up at Colorado. Was also at one point in time committed to Notre Dame, so keep an eye on that. Pete, as of yesterday, says Nebraska and Kansas are also some teams that are interested right now in his services. So Dylan Edwards, I think he's one of the best players available right now, one of the sneaky best players available. Going to be a massive addition to someone's roster here in the not-too-distant future. Damien Martinez is currently still in the transfer portal making decisions. Pete Nakos put in a pick for Damien Martinez to end up at Miami. Now, he was on the On3 Recruits channel yesterday, was Pete Nakos with Josh Newberg, and Josh asked him point blank, he said, Pete, is this done by the end of the week? Damien Martinez to Miami. Pete said, yep, I think so. To give you some background, Damien Martinez, running back from Oregon State, jumps in the portal, becomes the best player available, ran for 2,000 yards in 2 years in Corvallis. Dude is an absolute dog, and I think he fits really nicely with Miami from a schematic perspective. He wants to get north and south. Shannon Dawson wants to run the football, and from an attitude perspective. I just said, Damien Martinez, he runs angry. He runs violent. He's smooth, but he also does not shy away from contact. That is a big back delivering the blow when he gets downhill, like 220, 230. Not easy tackling him, all right? That fits exactly with who I think Mario Cristobal wants Miami to eventually evolve into, that physical enforcer kind of bully within the ACC and within the state of Florida. Speaking of running backs, Penny Boone has narrowed down his recruitment. Penny Boone, again, we talk about him a lot on this show because his name has continued to pop up in the winter transfer portal, transferred from Toledo to Louisville after being the MAC Offensive Player of the Year in 2023. Now he's back in the portal. I told you Louisville was on the table in terms of a return for him at some point in time. Does not look like that's the case. The report is, per Pete Nakos and Steve Wiltfong, that Georgia and Kentucky are the final two right now for him. Now, things can change. It's the portal. Things get weird. But the reality is, Georgia and Kentucky being those final two, I look at Georgia, and it'd be great to go to Georgia. It'd be great to run behind that offensive line. If you're Georgia, you would absolutely be fired up to take a Penny Boone. But that running back room is a little bit crowded. Roderick Robinson, Trevor Etienne. To me, Kentucky makes the most sense. And seeing Penny Boone play against his former team that he was at in Louisville at the end of the season, I would just add some more spice to that rivalry. Would be a very, very entertaining storyline, if nothing else. Another individual, another high-profile player, narrowing down his list of schools. KeAndre Lambert-Smith, the Penn State wide receiver, averaged 12 yards reception a season ago, was the most explosive player for my money at Penn State last season. He's down to Auburn and Texas A&M. A lot of schools were jockeying for his services. USC was being talked about at one point in time. West Virginia, I came out here earlier when he jumped in the portal and said they were a school that was getting traction early. Sounds like they're no longer in the mix. This would be an absolutely massive get for both Texas A&M and Auburn. For Texas A&M, it would kind of jumpstart the Mike Elko era. Noah Thomas looked great in that spring game. Connor Wegman, I think, is going to be a dude for you playing quarterback. If you want to maximize your offensive potential, you got to have multiple answers for your quarterback. I think Noah Thomas is going to be an answer, but you'll bring in KeAndre Lambert-Smith and help Connor Wegman even more. That'd be massive. That'd be absolutely massive and would be a good deal for them as they get rolling there in College Station under the Mike Elko regime. Now, Auburn, I think, is very fascinating for a number of reasons. If you can give Peyton Thorne more help, just like I mentioned with Connor Wegman and their offensive structure at Texas A&M, you know you got one go-to guy in Cam Coleman. I know he's a true freshman. I know that the spring game is just a practice, but at the end of the day, man, all of our eyeballs work just fine when we watch that dude play ball. We know he's going to be a freak. We know he's going to be a guy day one they try to force-feed the football to. You bring in a KeAndre Lambert-Smith to help in some ways, I think, mentor him within that wide receiver room, a guy who's kind of been there, done that at a high level, played in Rose Bowls, scored long touchdowns in Rose Bowls, played against some really high level of competition in college football to help bring Cam Coleman along. I think that'd be huge, and I think offensively it would be another weapon for Hugh Freeze to utilize. I'm curious how much that factors into this recruitment, having an offensive mind as your head coach who is, from what we understand, more or less running the offense this year. I think that helps the pitch for Auburn, but again, we'll see. From what I've been told, NIL is going to factor heavily into this recruitment as well. Tyler Barron is back in the transfer portal officially. Now, Tyler Barron's had a fascinating last couple of months. Played at Tennessee last year. Good player at Tennessee. 6 sacks for the Vols. Transferred from Tennessee to Ole Miss. Then jumps back in the portal and transfers from Ole Miss to Louisville. Big win for the Cards, right? Now he is officially back in the portal, looking for a new home. Very curious to see what the market is for Tyler Barron, because on one hand, you're saying, okay, why are we leaving all these schools? Why are we jumping from place to place to place in such a short period of time? Other part of this, he plays edge. He's been productive at a high level in the best conference in college football. I mean, hey, he's a premium position. You have a guy like Tyler Barron, there's no question about it. From a pure on-paper perspective, he makes your defense better. So we'll see who's in the running for a one Tyler Barron. Last guy I want to talk about here, this was one of the most elite social media recruitments, I think, or one of the most elite social media commitments that we've seen this point in the spring transfer portal. Orange Lutheran High School alum, shout out to the Lancers, Kyle Ford is transferring from UCLA back to USC, where he was previously when he committed there at a high school and played there for a number of years. Now, I think the reason, and again, I'm speculating here, have to believe that when he was at USC that first time around, that wide receiver room was a little bit more crowded, goes to UCLA, and now he's going back to USC. The reason why this commitment to me was so elite, he announced it on Twitter with Hayes Fawcett, as one does when they're a high-profile recruit at the high school or portal level, and he put a quote in there that says, "My bad, I was tripping the first time. I was tripping at first." He's back to USC. Obviously kind of tongue-in-cheek with him transferring from his rival back to his original school, but it is what it is. Hey, I'll tell you what, man, this is a really talented player. I don't think he's seen the success that he's capable of just yet. He was a top 10 wide receiver in that class of 2019. 6'3", 220 pounds. That's a put-together wide receiver, man. You go over the middle, try and tackle Kyle Ford, like you better bring your hard hat and lunch pails. It's not going to be an easy task. So curious to see his impact this upcoming year as they try and break in a new quarterback. I expect it to be Miller Moss, but nonetheless, Mekhi Lemon looked good in that spring game. They're going to have some guys throw the football to. Deuce Robinson, Kyle Ford, getting back in that offense. Someone who's familiar with it could be a tremendous asset for them as they move here into the fall. So the portal keeps rolling. Again, make sure you're subscribed. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. It's kind of a slow burn. Not a ton of fireworks, not a ton of mega names jumping in there, but even so, this transfer portal cycle, we'll say it one more time, it's about depth. It's about what you have in November. It's about armoring the car as best as possible so you can play your best. Your best is required in those high-stakes games late in the year. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.